I don't think I've been this excited for the release of a bronzer ever in my life. First of all, it's a huge surprise to me that bronzer of all things has gotten me so excited, and the most shocking part of it all is that it's a Charlotte Tilbury product. Not because I have anything against the brand, but just because Charlotte Tilbury is a brand's name that I have a really hard time pronouncing, and also because I've just never really fallen for the hype of her products. For whatever reason, they just never quite appealed to me. I recently tried her finishing powder, and I think her finishing powder is fine, but nothing that really rocked my world enough for me to think, oh my gosh, now I need to try all the Charlotte Tilbury. But then she announced these bronzers, and something about the packaging and the beautiful design, like the beautiful pattern, really appealed to me. And I got so excited that I had to stalk the Cult Beauty website for a full, I think almost 2 weeks before these bronzers became available, because they were, I think, supposed to launch on a certain date and they didn't really launch on that date, and I was afraid that if I'm not fast enough, the fair shade that I really wanted to purchase is going to sell out, which unfortunately is the case now. So I think as of now, both on the Charlotte Tilbury website as well as on Cult Beauty, which are the 2 retailers that I can purchase her makeup from, both of these have the rest of the shades available, but not the shade Fair. I hesitated which bronzer to pick, and in the end I decided that I'm just going to pick them both up because Cult Beauty had a 20% off sale, which included the Charlotte Tilbury bronzers. And since I thought both of these shades might work for me, and I just really enjoyed the whole idea of them so much, I decided to live my best crazy life and just pick up both bronzers. So today we're going to be talking about the, what are these called? Let me take a look. The Beautiful Skin Sun-Kissed Glow Bronzer, combining science and color. Scratch the science, there's really no science in here. Supposedly there are some skincare related ingredients such as hyaluronic acid and vitamin D, but I would really like to know how much of that bronzer I need to slather on my skin, and also how that skincare is going to penetrate through my layer of SPF and foundation. And second of all, why do only my cheekbones deserve hyaluronic acid and vitamin D? Does the rest of my skin not deserve to be taken care of? Or should I be slathering bronzer all over my face, Charlotte Tilbury? Please explain this to me. So let's scratch the science, because as of now that is the only thing that really bothers me about these bronzers. Everything else I think is beautiful. Yesterday when I received my package from Cult Beauty, so I ordered in the end of last week, shortly after everything was launched on Cult Beauty, because one of you wonderful souls reached out to me on Instagram because you knew I was talking Cult Beauty, and you informed me that the bronzers had finally launched, so I was able to be in time and grab both shades. I've always had a really great experience with Cult Beauty shipping to the Netherlands. Things usually arrive within a couple of days, and there was even a holiday in between. So I have to say that I've ordered quite a few times from Cult Beauty. It's very ironic because for many years I didn't make a single purchase from Cult Beauty, and this year alone I've already made 4 or 5 purchases from their website. It's bonkers, it's bizarre, and I have no explanation for it. I do have an explanation for it. They carry Suku now. Anyway, that's not at all the point of this video. So yesterday the bronzers finally arrived, and they are, first of all, humongous. They're very big. You can see here in comparison to the rest of my face how huge that thing is, but I already knew that because I had seen other people's videos. Something that I didn't expect is how beautiful and hefty and weighty and luxurious the packaging feels in your hands. It does not by any means feel cheap, and these are not cheap bronzers, mind you, but I think that they feel their price. And I just think the packaging is so incredibly stunning. It has this rose gold design with the little rays of sunshine coming from what seems to be the color of chocolate, so everything about this packaging appeals to me. The product itself also looks beautiful. It looks like a little whipped moussey chocolate thing that you want to eat. And I also noticed that on the mirror there is a little star, which I think is really cute. Is that something that happens with a lot of other Charlotte Tilbury products? Does she always have this star on her mirrors? I don't think I have this mirror on my powder. Let me just quickly check. Nope, I don't have the little star on my finishing powder, so I think it's a really teeny tiny cute little detail that I appreciate. From what I understand, these are meant to be a very long lasting waterproof formula, and at first I thought, cream bronzer in a waterproof formula. Okay, Charlotte Tilbury. But yesterday I swatched the bronzers when they came in so that I can post the ugliest swatches on Instagram that you can imagine. Thank goodness Lisa was in the photo to salvage it. And then I went to shower. And I found out that even though I was wearing long sleeves throughout the whole evening and I was already under the shower for a significant amount of time, the two swatches were still on my hand. I actually had to actively scrub them off of my hand. So there is something to the water-resistant quality of this bronzer. So as I said, I ordered two shades. I ordered the shade Fair, which is meant to be for people of a very light complexion. This is the shade Fair. And what I found really interesting about this shade is that it looked like it had very neutral, light, cool tones to it. And you don't really come across bronzers that are quite this shade that look flattering. And I don't really have anything quite like this, at least not in my cream bronzer collection, so I was very excited to pick this shade up and try it out, because I thought this might be something that I use a bit more as like a contour slash bronzer on days when I want something a little bit more neutral instead of something a little warmer. And the true bronze shade, I think, for my skin tone would be the shade Medium, which has this slightly deeper, more chocolate, warmer tone to it, without it being like too deep of a color for someone of my skin tone. Now, I have three other cream bronzers in my collection, so we're going to first swatch the two Charlotte Tilbury bronzers just on my hand, and we're going to compare the texture, formula and color to the other three bronzers that I have in my collection. Now, I already touched these yesterday, as I said, because I touched them to swatch them, and they're very unique texture. They remind me a little bit of the Chanel Soleil Teint de Chanel, but it's a somewhat drier formula, spongy, moussey texture. Like, moussey texture tends to feel a little bit more whipped, so these are not whipped, but they have a little bit of like moussiness to them and sponginess to them. It's a very interesting formula. I quite like it. So let's swatch the shade Fair here on the back of my hand. Obviously, I've packed on quite a bit of the bronzer so I can show you the color, but you can very nicely see, I think, that it's a very fair shade, one that can apply quite subtly on your cheekbones, and that has lighter, more neutral tones to it. I wouldn't necessarily say this is very cool toned. To me, this resides more in the neutral tones. And then let's watch the shade Medium. So here you have the shade Medium, which you can see very clearly compared to this shade is quite much warmer, deeper, and still not quite orange though. I still think this is more like a neutral warm shade than it is like a very orange type of bronzer. It definitely isn't an orange or a red tone bronzer. I think this is more like a neutral, a deeper tan shade. I don't really know how else to call it. Anyway, now because I said that these remind me in terms of texture to the Chanel Soleil Teint de Chanel bronzer, let's take out the Chanel Soleil Teint de Chanel bronzer. And I think the shade that this reminds me more of is the Medium shade, so let's hold them next to each other. For reference, I do only have the older version of this bronzer, so this is the original bronzer, not the two new shades, like the new formula and new shades that were released recently. But I know a lot of you have the original one, so I thought it might be interesting to compare the two. So here you have the original Chanel Soleil Teint de Chanel, and here you have the shade from Charlotte Tilbury. There are differences in their tones, but I think in terms of like the depth of the color, maybe they're a bit similar, with the Charlotte Tilbury being slightly deeper. Yeah, so this feels kind of similar, but it's just more waxy and emollient compared to the one from Charlotte Tilbury. Obviously, I've had it for years, so it's full of hairs. So here you have the Chanel Soleil Teint de Chanel bronzer. You can see it's quite much lighter in tone compared to the Medium tan from Charlotte Tilbury, but it has similar tones to it. I would say these two might be considered to be a gradation of the same tone of bronzer. Now, another really beautiful cream bronzer that I have in my collection is the Milk Makeup bronzer in the shade Baked, which I would say in terms of texture is much more similar to the Chanel bronzer than it is to the Charlotte Tilbury one. But let's watch this shade over here. Again, a very heavy swatch. This is actually, in terms of color, maybe more similar to the one from Charlotte Tilbury, but is this maybe a little bit more pink leaning? I don't know how it's coming across on camera, but in real life this looks just to be slightly more pink compared to the one from Charlotte. And last but not least, I have the shade Honey Glaze from Fenty Beauty, which I think is probably going to be the deepest and most warm toned, like most orange toned of them all, but I could be wrong, so let's just give that one a little bit of a swatch. This is also much more emollient and waxy compared to the one from Charlotte. This is for sure much more of like a dewy formula. And interestingly enough, yeah, these three colors are all sort of similar to each other, and yet the undertones are just slightly different. This is the most orange one. This is the like medium orange in terms of tone, and this is the most like neutral leaning one out of the bunch. And if we were to put a step in between this shade and this shade, it would probably be this shade. Let's proceed to applying the bronzer. I'm first going to apply this shade Fair. This is applying beautifully. I don't even have to blend it, it's just blending itself out, so they're very easy to manipulate. I don't think it looks dull and matte, but it also doesn't have a glow, so it just has like a very natural demi-matte finish to it. And I think this color is beautiful. It has a bit of like that contouring, shadowing quality without being too cool toned and unflattering on my skin tone. If I want to go for something more natural, more of like in natural shadow, this would be the bronzer of choice. I really love this color. Now on my other side, I'm going to apply the shade Medium, and maybe I should take a bit less because that seems like a deeper shade. Oh yeah, definitely a deeper shade that I need to be a bit less heavy-handed with, but then again it blends out so easily. This just melts with your skin. It's such a nice formula. I really love this. And with how deep this looks in the pan, I don't find that it applies too deep on the skin. I actually think this is the perfect like bronzer shade for someone of my skin tone, or maybe a bit lighter or a bit deeper, like light to medium. And it's the perfect like more like bronzer shade without being too orange or too red. I still feel like this has somewhat more neutral tones to it, and it doesn't really lean one way or the other too much, and it's just the perfect bronzer shade. This is the perfect like bronzer slash contour shade, and this is the absolute perfect bronzer shade. I hope you can see the difference. Here you have the shade Fair, and here you have the shade Medium. FYI, I used a synthetic brush which is very densely packed. This is a Spectrum brush that I really like to use with my cream bronzers specifically. Let me quickly apply a little bit of blush and highlighter so that we can finish off this video. I'm just going to apply this Succu blush in the shade 08 from their melting powder formula. And FYI, I'm just going to wear two different shades of bronzer on my skin today because fortunately for me, I don't think my colleagues will notice. I will report back on the longevity of these bronzers in my comment section, because I will just edit this video in the evening and post it, and I will have already worn the makeup for quite a while. I'm going to take Lunar Nude now from Pat McGrath Labs to highlight, and I will let you know how they lasted on my skin. I have a suspicion that based on how well they lasted in the shower, they're probably not going to budge throughout the day. Alright, final thoughts. Even though I think I made my feelings for these pretty clear throughout the video, these look gorgeous, they apply effortlessly, they look beautiful on the skin. I really enjoy the undertones of both bronzers that I picked up, and even though I originally thought, okay, if one of these shades doesn't work for me, I can always sell it, I can tell you for a fact none of these is going anywhere, because I'm going to find use for both of these colors. The more bronzy shade is obviously not something that is super unique. If you already have the Chanel Soleil Tan de Chanel or any other bronzer which is like more of like a typical bronzy color, you probably don't need the shade Medium. With that said, I think it is the most neutral one that I have in my collection, maybe together with the one from Milk Makeup, but I don't know, I still think it's a different tone and a different texture and a different finish on the skin, and the shade Fair is something I did not have in my collection. It's just the perfect like bronze slash contour shade. I really like the shade Fair. I'm very sorry to have excited you all for this shade because it is sold out, but I'm sure at some point it will come back, so don't you worry about that. I think these are probably among the most exciting new things that have come out on the market recently, which is why I was so excited for them. Alright, I've had a bunch of technical issues while filming this video because I have a different SD card for something work related. My usual SD card is with one of my colleagues right now, so this video took a really long time to film. I'm already super fucking late for work, so I'm just going to get going. Let me know if you have any questions about these bronzers. Did you pick up any of these? Which ones did you pick up in terms of shades? How do you like the formula? Let's chat about these in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!